Meanwhile, Gazan officials said Israel launched airstrikes on or near at least 3 hospitals this Friday, including the biggest, Al-Shifa, where Israel has claimed that Hamas has hidden command centers and tunnels. Allegations a militant group denies. Meanwhile, citing colleagues on the ground, the World Health Organization said there's ongoing violence around Al-Shifa. The WHO also says 20 out of the enclave's 35 hospitals are now out of action. Others are only partly functional. Tensions remaining high in the region amid the war. Israel's military said it struck an organization inside Syria that was behind a drone crash into a school in southern Israel a day earlier. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi rebels said they fired a batch of ballistic missiles at Israeli targets, some of which were heading for Eilat. For more, let's speak to Yossi Mekelberg, an associate fellow at Chatham House's Middle East and North Africa program. Hello to you once again. Just first of all, we're seeing more and more cross-border exchanges. Tell us about how some of the countries in the region are reacting to now 35 days of war.
Good afternoon. I think no doubt we start seeing these kind of transnational groups entering into the fray, which is dangerous in terms of escalation of this conflict. As you mentioned, after 5 weeks of it, we start seeing which groups, which countries are actually want to enter more actively into this, and those who are actually standing on the sidelines. And one of the ideas from day one is to make sure that the fire doesn't spread beyond Gaza. But right now we see here and there, either on the northern border of Israel, the Hezbollah, there are skirmishes for all the last 5 weeks. Apparently yesterday, a missile towards Eilat was launched from Syria, and also we see missiles from Yemen. What we need to see, and that's time will tell, are those more symbolic acts of support of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, or it's part of the first stages of joining in a larger scale, in a wider scale.
And do you think we're definitely headed for this conflict spilling over more borders?
Not necessarily. I think most of the country that launch right now, or the movement, organization launch missiles, don't intend to enter in a much wider or more intensely into this war, because they know also the implication, not only with Israel, but also with the United States. And we heard last week the leader of the Hezbollah in Lebanon, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, said, hey, we didn't know about this attack. It's 100% Palestinians. We don't want to spill over into Lebanon, and not even to the region, which means this is kind of the sentiment also in Tehran. But wars have their own dynamic, and I think we are entering into one of these moments of truth in this, as Israel closing more into Gaza, as the death toll is higher and higher. A lot of it of civilian. The United States also criticized Israel for the death toll among civilians, and this might push certain of these transnational organizations to join in.
Yeah, the USO stopping short of pushing for an all-out ceasefire in Gaza. Some other countries, Arab countries that have ties with Israel, what sort of balancing act is it for them to maintain these ties, but also condemn what's going on in Gaza?
Maintaining the ties are actually important, because if you don't have ties, you don't have influence. And actually, by having open channels of communication, they have more impact. It's not out of, obviously in this country, out of sympathy towards Hamas. It's more the worry of the death toll among civilians and among the many children. So fighting Hamas is one thing. What is now seen more, it's a war against Gaza, or at least the residents of Gaza, that most of them, the vast majority, has nothing to do with Hamas, is seen by Israel as a collateral damage. I think that's what worries very much, not only the regional powers, but also outside the region, and this can lead to an escalation. It also have an impact of destabilizing some countries in the region, and they're worried about it. But I think ties is one thing, but at the same time sending clear messages that there is difference between fighting Hamas and not paying attention or ignoring completely the right of civilians.
As we're having this conversation, Egypt's president and Qatar's emir are meeting. Do you think the way out of this conflict, or at least moving towards de-escalation, will come from Egypt and Qatar, more from a U.S.-led solution?
I think this is what we saw in the past, but this time it's way more complicated and complex. One is because the horrible atrocity committed by Hamas, which led kind of the objective of the war set by Israeli government to destroy Hamas, whatever it means, because it's more complex than just destroying its military capability, what you do with the political side or the ideological. The other thing is the hostages. And here we see contradictory messages from the Israeli government. On the one hand, it won't agree to a ceasefire to release the hostages if this is possible, this is negotiated, but then demand the release of the hostages in order to stop the war. So the question is, what's the best way? And this should be a top priority, how to return the 240 or so hostages.
All right, Yossi, thank you very much for your time. Yossi Mekelberg from Chatham House speaking to us from London. Thank you.